Uneasy peace. Gunmen strike Wajir frontier town as forensic experts toil to resolve identities of deadly Westgate Mall attack in Nairobi. UN-backed court in The Hague to give verdict on former Liberian President Charles Taylor's appeal.
At the end of the meeting, I saw President Kagame and President Kabila talking to each other in a very friendly way, and I think that's the atmosphere and spirit that we want to build on from today.
And the UN Special Envoy to the Great Lakes region, Mary Robinson, is optimistic over DR Congo and Rwandan relations. This is Africa Live on CCTV News with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also ahead on the program. Residents of Dakar in Senegal are facing acute water shortages as taps run dry across the city. And Cristiano Ronaldo scores twice as Real Madrid edge out La Liga newcomers AlShabaab. An Interpol team has been deployed to Kenya to help investigate an attack claimed by Somali Islamist militants on a Nairobi shopping mall that killed over 60 people and destroyed parts of the complex. Now headed by Interpol's Executive Director of Police Services, Jean-Michel Louboutin, the team includes disaster victim identification and data specialists. Now they will carry out real-time comparisons against Interpol's global databases on DNA and fingerprints and other evidence gathered from the crime scene. In the meantime, one person was killed and 3 others have been wounded in a grenade blast in the Kenyan town of Wajir, including a man suspected to have hurled the device at a supermarket. The police commander for the town, which is about 500 kilometers northeast of the capital, Nairobi, said it was too early to say who was behind the Wednesday evening attack. The region is prone to banditry and low-key clan clashes by pastoralist communities, but has also suffered sporadic light arms attacks by the Islamic Somalia military group AlShabaab. Well, Mogadishu residents have been keeping a close eye on the events that unfolded following the attack in Nairobi's Westgate Mall. Now, they say they sympathize with Kenyans, but also fear a backlash on the many Somalis living in Nairobi and around Kenya. CCTV's Maria Galang has the story.
Somali residents in the capital Mogadishu on Wednesday expressed their sympathy and support for Kenyans still reeling from the attack by Somali-based militants on the Westgate Mall in Nairobi. Residents in Mogadishu were glued to their television screens, watching the events unfold.
There's still the prospect of high-level discussions.
I send my condolences to our brothers in Kenya, and we say as Somali elders that we share their problems as neighbors.
Kenya is home to a large ethnic Somali community, many of whom have fled years of war and turmoil to seek a better life in East Africa's biggest economy. There are fears in the little Mogadishu quarter of Nairobi that the attack could trigger a violent backlash against them.
I ask the Kenyan authorities and the people to save Somali businesses and the lives of innocent refugees living in Kenya.
AlShabaab said it launched the assault to demand Kenya withdraw its troops fighting with African peacekeepers in Somalia. The attack has highlighted the reach of the Somali group and the capabilities of its crack unit, believed to be behind the attack, confirming Western and regional fears that as long as Somalia remains in turmoil, it will be a recruiting and training ground for militant Islamists. Maria Galang, CCTV.
Let's get now the latest from CCTV's Kofi Awoonor, who joins us from the Westgate Mall. Kofi, what can you tell us? There were indications earlier today that journalists may be allowed access into the shopping mall. Is this likely to happen?
Well, Beatrice, nothing much happened from this end. We've been camping here since morning. Just like you said, journalists were hoping, probably they could get the chance to go inside and get a clear picture of what exactly happened and how, the situation is inside the mall. But that has not happened until now. Journalists also missed that chance sometime yesterday. They were, supposed to go in. But what we understand is that, the forensic experts working inside have been dusting for fingerprints. They've been taking DNA samples. We have ballistic experts inside. And the fear here is that probably the crime scene could be contaminated if journalists are allowed inside. And that's why they would want to, just do their job and then let journalists in as soon as they finish. That, of course, if that is going to happen, then probably it's going to happen, like they said, not less than 7 days from today.
Well, Kofi, there have been reports in sections of the Kenyan media that some of the victims were tortured. What can you tell us about that?
Of course, those are reports that have been doing rounds here. There are also some very, very disturbing pictures that have been going round of, the victims of that attack, those who remained inside during and before the fighting started between them and the security officers. They are very, very disturbing pictures, of course. But those reports have not been confirmed, especially by the government, and therefore not many would want to talk about that unless the government, says something about it.
All right, CCTV's Kofi Awoonor at the Westgate Mall. They're joining us live from the Westgate Mall. Now, Ghana is also mourning following the loss of beloved poet Kofi Awoonor, who died in the Kenyan mall attack. Awoonor, 78, was a literary icon in his native Ghana and was known worldwide for his innovative style that translated the rhythms of his Ewe language into English. He was also a veteran diplomat. Awoonor had been in Kenya with his son to take part in the Story Moja Hay Festival, a 4-day literary event. Mourners sang funeral dirges and traditional leaders poured liberations on Wednesday for Awoonor as hundreds gathered at the airport where his body was brought home. The casket then was taken from the airport in a hearse. His longtime friend and fellow academic Kofi Awoonor said the poet might have foreseen his end coming.
The death was not one anybody was expecting. People have observed that given certain details that are coming out, it appears that he sensed that the end was coming. But I bet he didn't know how it was going to come, and especially where it was going to come. That would have come to even he himself as a surprise.
Meanwhile, AlShabaab's chief Ahmed Abdi Godane has threatened more attacks on Kenya. He claims the Westgate attack was retaliation for Kenya's military presence in Somalia. And he adds, quote, "Now it is your time to taste the fruits," end quote. Analysts don't doubt AlShabaab's ability to attack again. They say the Westgate shows Al-Qaeda's influence on the group. CCTV's Mohammed Hirmoge has more from Mogadishu.
It's an attack that's put Al-Shabaab onto a new plane as a terror network, well coordinated and sustained for days. Al-Shabaab may have lost territory at home, but shown it can strike at will beyond Somali borders. The attack follows a recent power struggle within Al-Shabaab in which 4 top commanders were killed. Those now in charge are hardliners committed to global jihad.
Well, it looks like that the infighting between Al-Shabaab did not affect the group or reduce their power. And now the rebel factions within Al-Shabaab have been defeated. The militant group has now central control and strong links with Al-Qaeda.
Al-Shabaab announced its alliance with Al-Qaeda early last year, a relationship many saw as propping up Al-Qaeda following the death of Osama bin Laden. Now, though, Al-Qaeda is extending its influence. An Al-Shabaab commander told the media that the group takes orders from the large Al-Qaeda network. To that extent, the group is out to prove that it is a global network that can strike at will and that doesn't tolerate divisions from within. Some experts say Al-Shabaab is also economically stable. That's despite losing control of its main economic hub, the southern port of Kismayo, a year ago.
Even while there was division within the Al-Shabaab, they have still been able to attack effectively. at the courthouse complex and the UNDP compound. This is a force that is still strong, even economically. They levy money on all vehicles in areas where they control, and there's a reasonable income from the Barra airport also.
When this siege was finally broken, Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta said his forces had defeated and shamed the terrorists. For AlShabaab and its sympathizers though, Westgate is a victory. For the rest of Africa, it's a warning. Mohamed Irmoge, CCTV, Mogadishu.
Let's get more now on the security analysis on the Westgate attack in Nairobi. We are joined live in studio by Mr. Sam Mattock, a security expert and Chief Executive Officer of Halliday Finch, a private security company. Sam, thank you for joining us here. Give us an analysis of the security operations at the Westgate operation.
The initial entry for the terrorists, obviously they've had months to plan this operation. The security forces had minutes to respond. So the analysis is that, and certainly if you look at it on the media, that this was slow, it was confused, there was a disjointed effort from our security forces here in Kenya. However, every scenario of this sort of incident is varied, so very difficult to plan for. It was almost a textbook entry by the terrorists. It was a military operation, unfortunately, against civilians, and my family and my prayers go out to their families. So the analysis is it was expertly handled for maximum media effect by the terrorists, and the friendly forces, local, did as best as they could given the short amount of time, Beatrice.
There are those, though, who have criticized this, saying that the response of the security operations was slow, but given the fact that there was a bit of confusion as to whether it was a robbery or, you know, a terrorist attack, what's your take on the response after it was established that it was a terror attack?
Yeah. After it was established, and believe me, for the first 24 hours, it was still out there that this could have been a bungled bank robbery, something that had gone wrong. The response from the Kenyan Defence Force and Recce Company, which is their Special Forces elite team from the police services, was very good with the amount of numbers that they put on the ground. They put them out there quickly. So I would say that the response was good. The actual operation was a little bit slow in my professional opinion. However, I wasn't on the ground. I was not the commander on the ground, and it's very difficult for me or for the commander on the ground to make the right decisions. Where I would say, Beatrice, that there was a severe failing, and that is in the intelligence community. So that's not just the Kenyan intelligence community, that is the international intelligence community, that is security service providers such as ours, it is the police. Basically, there was a failing of any pre-warning of an event of this type.
All right. So when you look at the number or the nationalities, though, of the attackers, there are reports which have not yet been verified that it could have been a multinational attack here, but there were also Kenyans among the attackers. And it looks like the AlShabaab is now recruiting within Kenyan borders. How can that be contained, though?
Well, multi-pronged question, but certainly, Beatrice, if you look at the profile of the attackers, there is no doubt there are foreign fighters in there. That has been confirmed by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and by the President. So yes, I will confirm that there were foreign fighters. Whether we will get to the bottom of of who the foreign fighters were is a very, very different subject. Certainly, from a recruitment point of view, Shabab was involved, but so was Al-Hajji, which is a local element, spin-off from Al-Shabaab, which is locally grown in Kenya. They are changing the tactics. I'm very involved with Somalia and have spent a lot of time there and have seen the African Union forces grow in their capability to contain what is a very serious conventional warfare threat in Mogadishu. And the terrorists have realized that they will never win a conventional warfare against a conventional army. And so they're trying new tactics, they're trying new ways to terrorize us, and they are succeeding, hence Westgate, very well.
There are still questions that abound, you know, regarding the hostages, the hostage situations, and the identity of the attackers. The forensic audit that is ongoing, what is that likely to reveal?
Well, the explosives and ordnance people are just really leaving the building now. There was a lot of scattered ordnance around, whether it be hand grenades, whether they be booby traps. And remember, every single inch of that property has to be cleared before any forensics can take place. But certainly the forensics are going to be hampered by the fire. Any hostages that were caught underneath the roof collapse, any terrorists that were caught underneath the roof collapse will really put off any forensic examination, but they will be checking DNA to every minute detail, and certainly that will also be happening in the mortuaries as well.
All right, Mr. Sam Matok, security expert and chief executive officer of Holiday Fitch, thank you for joining us here on Africa Live.
Thank you.
You're watching Africa Live on CCTV News. Coming up on the program, UN-backed court in The Hague to give verdict on former Liberian President Charles Taylor's appeal.
I saw President Kagame and President Kabila talking to each other in a very friendly way, and I think that's the atmosphere and spirit that we want to build on from today.
And the UN Special Envoy to the Great Lakes region, Mary Robinson, is optimistic over the DR Congo and Rwanda relations. We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
We need a trade passport.
Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world. Former Liberian President Charles Taylor is to know his fate before a UN-backed court on Thursday when it hands down a ruling on his appeal against his 50-year sentence for arming Sierra Leonean rebels. Now Taylor, who is 65, was found guilty last year of supporting rebels from neighboring Sierra Leone. The rebels waged a terror campaign during a civil war that claimed 120,000 lives. And as Liberia's president from 1997 to 2003, Charles Taylor reportedly supplied rebels with guns and ammunition in exchange for blood diamonds mined by slave labor during the conflict. The rebels, who included drugged child soldiers, were infamous for mutilating their victims and using them as sex slaves. The Special Court for Sierra Leone is at Liechtenstein, a suburb just outside The Hague in the Netherlands, where Charles Taylor's case was moved for security reasons. His sentencing in May 2012 was the first handed down by an international court against a former head of state since the Nazi trials at Nuremberg in 1946. Charles Taylor has maintained his innocence throughout the trial. Let's now cross over to CCTV's Sandra Guthman, who's joining us live from The Hague. Sandra, what is the latest from the court session?
Well, we're getting now the final decision in the courtroom behind me. Charles Taylor has just been asked to rise by the appeals judge. He's been shooting holes in the defense's challenges to the trial chamber's guilty verdict against Charles Taylor for war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in Sierra Leone. They have argued that the trial and evidence presented by the prosecution has been wrought with factless evidence, and that a lot of that evidence was flawed. They've also dismissed count after count of the defense arguments that Charles Taylor was not directly responsible for those crimes. In fact, they say that the trial was carried out very smoothly, very thoroughly, and that Charles Taylor's strategic involvement in crimes committed in Sierra Leone by the RUF and AFRC forces during that war were very much his responsibility, and he is wholly liable. They've now, it appears, decided that the 50-year sentence has been upheld. There's questions now as to where he will serve the remaining days of his life.
All right, Sandra, what has been the immediate reaction to that, though?
I don't have a live stream at the moment, but Charles Taylor has been very agitated, quite nervous looking in that courtroom. I suspect he saw this decision coming. The trial chamber has gone through thousands, hundreds of thousands of witness evidence, and this has been a decade-long trial, and it was widely suspected that either the appeals chamber would have upheld this sentence or perhaps even increased the number of years Charles Taylor would serve in prison. There are a number of victims and relatives of victims from the Sierra Leonean War here today. They are up there in that chamber listening to the handing down of this verdict. I suspect this is a sign of relief for many affected by that war.
All right, CCTV Sandra Guthman joining us there from The Hague. Thank you. Now to the ongoing United Nations General Assembly, where the presidents of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda spoke before a global audience Wednesday. Their speeches came amid strife between the two countries. The DRC has fought alongside UN peacekeepers to neutralize and disarm rebel groups in the country's east, while the UN is accusing Rwanda of acting as a destabilizing force in the conflict. Stephen Fee has this report.
President Kabila expressed his support for the UN peacekeeping force in his country, the largest such contingent in the world.
These efforts are all the more laudable because the enemies of peace are always in wait.
The intervention force in his country has succeeded in pushing rebel M23 forces out of the eastern city of Goma, at least for now. The UN has said Rwanda has inflamed tensions in the DRC, and today President Kabila said it was ironic as his country welcomed refugees from Rwanda after the 1994 genocide.
It is because we acted in solidarity by welcoming on our territory refugees from Rwanda that the Congolese populations of the eastern part of my country are deprived of peace, the elementary right for all humans. They continue to count up the dead.
In an effort to bridge their differences, the presidents of DRC and Rwanda met earlier this week with the UN Special Envoy to the Great Lakes region, Mary Robinson.
At the end of the meeting, I saw President Kagame and President Kabila talking to each other in a very friendly way, and I think that's the atmosphere and spirit that we want to build on from today.
Later in the day, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon met with President Kabila and agreed all parties to a peace and security framework must live up to their agreements. Separately, a UN report commended the DRC for making progress in punishing those who violate human rights, but said the situation is still rapidly deteriorating in the war-torn eastern regions. Stephen Fee, CCTV, at the United Nations in New York.
Medical sources say at least 27 protesters were killed Wednesday in clashes with security forces during countrywide demonstrations against a cut in fuel subsidies in Sudan. Now, security forces fired tear gas to disperse the biggest wave of public anger since against President Omar Hassan al-Bashir's government in over a year. Ahmed Bilal, the country's information minister and government spokesperson, said the army has been deployed to enhance security. He also acknowledged reports of an internet shutdown but promised that the cyber blackout will soon end. The spokesperson accused unspecified elements of inciting the demonstrations, which started Monday in Sudan's central state of Gezira and spread later to other parts of the country, including Khartoum, Omdurman, Darfur and eastern Sudan. We'll now take a short break on Africa Live, but still ahead on the program. Residents of Dakar in Senegal are facing acute water shortages as taps run dry across the city. Residents of Senegal's capital, Dakar, were recently forced to walk long distances in search of water after the city suffered a major cut in water supply. And it turns out that the city's infrastructure may be crumbling under the weight of its rising population and aging connections. The country has now embarked on upgrading services in the capital.
Queuing for water. It's a scene commonly associated with residents of slums and refugee camps. But sadly, it's the new reality for residents of the upmarket suburbs of Senegal's capital, Dakar. Long hours spent waiting to fill one container. A critical water supply cut has seen women and children walk 3 kilometers daily in search of drinking water.
We are suffering due to the lack of water in our homes. It's difficult to have clean toilets. In Senegal, we do not have a backup plan. In Europe and elsewhere, there would be at least 2 lines. In case one fails, then the other takes over.
It's a challenge for Senegal's biggest city. Massive investment is needed to fund a long list of public infrastructure, including improved roads and rail links and upgrading its electricity supply. It's money the West African country lacks, with rising demands from an urban population that is growing at an annual rate of 4%. Huge demand for access to clean water from newly connected users and low investments in the sector has had its toll, leading to recurrent water cuts. The state water company SDE says its main supply pipe was damaged and that it was working to fix the problem.
This canalization must be completely replaced. We offer to do the pre-funding of the renewal. Partner companies are already preparing the main mechanic piece, which is defective, as soon as possible.
Residents of Dakar can only hope that the situation is addressed urgently so that recurrent water shortages become a thing of the past. Robert Soy, CCTV.
Now let's take a look at how the markets performed in early morning trade across the continent. The Nigeria All-Share Index was up 0.24%. The JSE Africa All-Share gained 0.33%. The NSE 20-share index also trended up at 0.37%, while the EGX in Egypt was flat in early trade. Time for a quick look at the sports headlines. Here it is.